Thank you, Kelvin. It's really amazing. Those kind words are ones that my father, may he rest in peace, would be proud of, and my mother would actually believe. So I'm touched and humbled by this opportunity to address you, the members of the graduating class of 2024. Your mothers, your fathers, your spouses, significant others, and other family members, honored guests, and friends and officials of the Warren Alpert School of Medicine at Brown University. This is the last lecture you'll receive as a medical school class. Not that any of you ever really attended lectures in person. Because of COVID and the availability of Zoom and YouTube, you watched medical school lectures on Zoom and YouTube at double speed. Since I only have 12 minutes to give this talk, I'm going to speak at double speed. It is my chance as a representative. It is my chance as a representative of the faculty to address you as a captive audience. Your brain is undoubtedly brimming with information. And if not, there's always up-to-date Google, Wiki. You'll figure it out. But I think there may be some things that we missed. Have we failed to mention some vital clinical pearl? Should we show you one last EKG? Perhaps a new tyrosine kinase inhibitor? One more electron micrograph? Should we conduct a last-minute CPC or M&M? No. Now, as you approach internship and the gateway to your lives as members of this still honored and honorable profession, I'll try to impart the importance of being there in all the dimensions of that phrase, and also some of the consequences of not being there. So, being there is the title of this talk, the power and poetry of your presence. Critical moments in your patient's medical journeys, at these moments, your presence cannot be overestimated. This has been made recurrently clear to me, most recently by one of my patients, Jennifer, who told me when I saw her in another hospital, unexpected to her, she said, "When you visited me in the hospital, it was the best medicine." So being there, attending, bearing witness, being present, all of these would seem so natural and intuitive to caregivers, so exceedingly simple, but it's not. Recently, I was making rounds in the hospital, and I noticed most of the ward teams were rounding in groups. One resident, whom I'll call Neil K., was not with his team, but he was sitting at a desk making phone calls. "Neil," I said, "where's your team?" He said, "Oh, they're rounding down the hall, but I'm doing it in my own way." "Neil, what way is that?" I inquired. "Watch, Dr. Schiffman." He looked at his patient list for a name, picked up his phone, and dialed a number. "Hello, Mrs. Johnson, this is Dr. K. How are you doing this morning? How did you sleep last night? How is your breathing today?" "Neil," I exclaimed, "she's down the hall. Why don't you just see her and, for God's sake, do a physical exam?" "Well," he said, "this takes me a shorter period of time, so I'll have more time to look up her labs and her x-rays and her CT scans." And I finished his sentence for him. "So then you can call her on the phone or text her and tell her what the results are." "Yeah, that's right." Yeah. So telemedicine in the hospital, he really wasn't there. Now I think iPads, iPhones, iPatients, iDoctors. Leave your computers, be with the patient. You must be there to listen, to touch, and examine your patients. A way to remember that is the acronym IS LEAST. I, introduce yourself. S, sit down at eye level. L, listen. E, empathize. A, ask for answers and ask questions. Summarize is the S, and T is touch. Abraham Varghese, a brilliant physician and writer, said, "I have no illusions about the limitations of the physical exam, but I increasingly feel that the exam is an important ritual whose importance has diminished for doctors because we have other ways of getting information. But it's still just as important for patients, important to the ritual of one patient bearing his soul and body, and it can't be overestimated. Rituals are terribly important to human beings because they signify transformation. This is how you learn and earn your right to say, I am your doctor. If, as a doctor, you shortchange this ritual, you end up by making patients feel that you aren't interested. They lose trust. Varghese has written a beautiful book called Cutting for Stone. If you haven't read it, read it. You will thank me. In it, an older surgeon asks a surgical trainee, in an emergency, what treatment is administered by ear? The answer, words of comfort. So go see the patient, examine the patient, comfort them, be there. You need to be there to teach, too. Besides being there for your patients and their families, you need to be there for your students as a teacher. It cannot be done long distance. Very often, as many of you know, the most effective teaching occurs as you explain what you're doing while you're doing it, narrating your own thoughts and actions. But you will have an incredible opportunity to teach every second of the day. But you need to be there. Teach everybody who will listen, and they will teach you. You need to be there for that. Why teach? Because it's fun, because you learn, because a teacher affects eternity. You can never tell where your influence stops, but you have to be there to teach. Being there to learn. Your new white coats and your new hospital scrubs will give you instantaneous access to the most secret compartments of a patient's being. Souls are bared in a matter of moments because of your status as a caregiver. The white coat is a reminder that because much has been given to you, much will be expected from you, as Dean Jane said. So the elements of humanism and professionalism, altruism, accountability, excellence, duty, honor, integrity, compassion, service, and empathy, as well as respect for others, comes with donning your coat and scrubs. But you know that as you care for patients, it will really benefit you as well. But what will it take from you? How much can and should you give? It may seem like doublespeak, contradictory and ironic. How much should you give? How much can you give? It will change from moment to moment. You will need to consider boundaries as you care for patients and families. William Osler's equanimitas and detached concern should be employed judiciously as you care for patients, because you've also heard that the secret about patient care is in caring for the patient. But how much involvement can you afford as you start caring for patients early on in your career? You hopefully will be the one at the end of the day who will leave the computer and prefer to sit on a patient's bed, hold their hands, turn off your pager and cell phone, and reflect and be mindful about what they experienced through the day. You can do that early on in your careers, and you should build upon this experience of wisdom acquisition. As Dean Jane said, get to know the patient as a person, who they are, what their family is like. And as I will say in a minute, the application of diagnostic and therapeutic tools depends on that knowledge of the individual. A colleague of mine has written about dealing with patients who are desperately ill. He said it makes you so aware of the existential realities of life, helps you crystallize its wonder and be continuously aware of its uncertainties. If you watch and listen carefully to your patients, you are always living a life a little closer to the edge. Yeah, we must use evidence as we make diagnostic and therapeutic decisions, but also use the wisdom gained from your time with patients to make excellent clinical judgments as you care for patients. Much has been written about personalized medicine using immune signatures and molecular genetics to help aim targeted therapy in patient-centered care. Yes, you must bring a disciplined intellect to the bedside, but as we individualize our scientific recommendations, we must be wise enough to put them in the context of the patient and family dynamics. Milton Homolsky, an honored chief of medicine at Brown, famously said, "We hope that molecular biology has not curdled the milk of your human kindness. Never forget the healing power of a kind word, a gentle touch, or a listening ear." The meeting of doctor and patient is a supreme occasion for being human. The doctor is a major source of moral energy, affecting the spiritual texture and substance of the entire society. But you must leave the electronic medical record to have that meeting. Your health and your family's health. Being a physician or parent or a partner must be done with your whole self. But if you're all these things, how many selves do you need? The conundrum is an ancient one. If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? But if I'm only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? One of your major challenges then will be to draw the boundary between professional and private life. We must all learn to recognize the limitations of what we can do for our patients. And simultaneously, we must nurture our own physical and emotional beings. Wellness, work-life balance, avoidance of burnout, and resilience strategies must become part of your professional trajectory. At the end of the day, you must figure out a way to give enough to your patients while leaving enough for you to regenerate. As Rita Sharon has written, medicine cannot be something that one does only with a part of the self. The boundaries with each doctor are as porous, perhaps, as those around illness or healing. But the effectiveness of medicine and its rewards for the physician may be proportional to the ability of the physician to achieve engagement rather than detachment, intimacy rather than distance, relation rather than isolation in the care of the patient. Each of us must find a work-life balance formula that works for us, but it must be flexible, and my own continues to evolve. So, conclusions. So, in conclusion, your words and reassurance, the power of your presence, which help make up the therapeutic alliance of doctor and patient, will be sometimes as important as your hands writing out prescriptions and even transplanting livers and hearts. So, last-minute advice. Talk with your patients. At the end of a busy, confusing day, go back to your patient's room. Sit down in their beds. It will take you 3 minutes, but it'll seem like hours to that patient. Turn off your cell phone. Turn off your beeper. Look them in the eyes. Hold their hands. Translate the data that you've gathered and support them and listen. Illness, you will find, often tells its secrets in casual parentheses. But there is no substitute for being there with them. Patients and families want to be listened to and understood. Be adventurous sometime. If your hospitalized patients are cared for by another physician, call or visit them. Everyone will be happily surprised, especially you. Be a rebel. Even if you've worked your full 80 hours work week already, stay in the hospital for a few more minutes. Comfort a worried family who look to you for guidance, but then get home to your own family and care for them and yourself. The division between science and intuition, between reason and romanticism, of which you have become so uncomfortably aware in medical school, can be annealed, can be joined in the care of patients. Disease is what the physician finds, but illness is what the patient feels, what the patient fears. Patients are more than their images on a computer screen, and cure depends on science and care and art. The poetry of your presence may sometimes soothe your patient better than science, and you will often treat despair along with disease. The comfort that comes from your reassuring hands stands for the promise, the very oath you will take in a few minutes in this holy place. And finally, I know that each of you dreams and believes you can make a difference. As Harriet Tubman has said, every great dream begins with a dreamer. Always remember you have within you the strength, the patience, and the passion to reach for the stars and change the world. Reach out now. Begin with one patient at a time. So go forth, take good care of your patients, take good care of yourselves and your families. I wish you Godspeed.